Thank you very much, JNU Lecture Series, for giving me this opportunity. I'm really honored to be one of the discussant here discussing on the lecture series of Superannuation Lecture of Professor Surinder Singh Jodhka. The theme that I have been given is agrarian changes, rural transformation, and the knowledge of village. There are three articles that I would be drawing upon to underline the intervention of Professor Jodhka into the disciplines of agrarian change, rural transformation, and the knowledge of village. The first essay that was published in 1988 and is titled From Book View to Field View, Social Anthropological Construction of the Indian Village. At the very outset of the essay, Professor Jodhka talks about the redundancy of book view of Indian village. And simultaneously, he talks about that how there was plethora of village studies that came up in the year 1950s and 60s. But when I am bringing this essay to discuss about his contributions, the seminal question is, where does the Professor Jodhka's essay's essence lie? Well, it lies in bringing about the limitations and the criticism of the field view of the village studies and also the social anthropologists' social and the economic locations. So the social and economic locations they came from might have influenced the outcome that eventually we get to see in the various monographs that we have. The study of village is not something which started happening in the colonial era. There are certain instances of village being studied in the pre-colonial era also. But the overarching arguments, or yes, you say the generalized theme that we see, like self-sufficiency of village, or village being little republic or mini republic, these were the outcomes of colonial interventions that was made during the British era. One important aspect of the article is that we see after India gained her independence in 1947, there was a surge of village-based village studies, ethnographic village studies. Now, the question is, why was there a surge at all? Professor Jodhka tries to answer it from two different aspects. First, that since India gained her independence in 1947, as an independent nation, it was looking for a self-identity of being a nation state. And simultaneously, in the arena of social anthropology, there was decline in the interest of study of tribal society. So it was kind of a match made in heaven, where social anthropologists got a subject to study as a village, and nation also got an identity in its village. And some of the village studies became so famous that the name of village got associated with the social anthropologists who carried out the study. Like we are very familiar with the term Srinivas's Rampura, Dubey's Sarmirpet, and Bete's Sripuram. The question of this essay and which surrounds this essay and which is at the heart of the essay is, what are the limitations of field view of the field view study of Indian village and of limitations of the social anthropologists who carried out these studies? The first pertains to gender and patriarchy question. Since owing to the empiricist perspective, the gender question, the patriarchy was at best understood to be something which is of natural order. There hardly is any sincere attempt made in that era to look at the question of gender, even with the power domination dynamics, or even at least with the critical lens. Also, the caste, class, and gender location of the social anthropologist, place they choose to live while their field study was going on, friends they made, also the male informants they were accompanied by, and the way of an upper caste lifestyle they endorsed, came to be as lacuna in the studies that were done, and also can be seen as an extension of limitations of these studies. That brings me to another essay, which also makes an intervention around two of the questions which mode of production debate has raised, of the many questions obviously. The essay was published in 2012 and is titled Agrarian Changes in the Times of Neoliberal Crisis. When there was a debate that Indian agriculture studies and agriculture is facing a crisis, well, there were many commentators and thinkers looking at the regions like it may be due to globalization, it may be due to the economic policy changes which were happening in 1990s. Professor Jodhka visits two of the villages that he studied in the village of Haryana as his doctoral thesis, and then tries to locate at the internal dynamics of changes caste and class relations in the ground, and also he tries to put a special focus on the phenomena called attached and unfree labor. Indian society, as I stated earlier, Indian social scientists were involved in a very famous debate called mode of production debate in 1970s and 80s. So, of the many questions, one question which was lingering around was the question of debt dependency and the attached and unfree labor. And it can be seen in the works of Professor Jodhka when he later empirically engages with these questions, as I told, during his PhD fieldwork into of the villages of Haryana. Now, when he revisits those villages after 20 years, what are the foundings? Especially, we are talking about the attached labor and the unfree labor. The nature of attached and unfree labor have changed. And the concept is very important because there have been multiple theoretical interventions made around the attached labor and the unfree labor. There were one kind of theorists who argued that since capitalism will come into agriculture, attached labor will itself wither away. But since it didn't wither away, there was also another kind of theorization going around that why was it persisting? So like Amit Madhuri argues that it may be due to the continuity of pre-colonial bondage, and others argued that it may be due to the celebrity of modern times and the concept of deproletarialization of Tom Brass that Sir engages with. Amidst the discussion going around how and why unfree and attached labor was persisting, Professor Jodhka later empirically makes an intervention with his seminal concept that is called labor mortgage. Now, we want to know we would obviously like to inquire what does labor mortgage mean. If I were to talk about its economical aspect, Professor Jodhka says that labor mortgage obviously meant that it was an unfree relationship, but it was also internally fragmented, and there were frequent contestation in the nature. With his empirical studies, it also becomes very clearer that there was a radical decline in the number of attached labor that was persisting. But the question that would bother us is why, or we would like to inquire upon is that why was there a decline in the number of attached labor? Professor Jodhka argues that there may be multiple reasons, one being the size of land holdings decreased. Second, also that there was very less enthusiasm among people to work as attached labor, obviously owing to the political and social consciousness that was being developed around that time, or it's getting developed yet. And another also the aspect that the changing economic time also demanded the new kind of hiring of labor, like we see today, hire and fire labor, casual labor in that sense. So, if I were to look at the centrality of this argument, if one asks, has the nature of attached and unfree labor changed? Yes. Has there been any, then how do we classify it as? Well, there certainly exist the elements of bondage and unfreedom in the sense that attached and unfree labor exist today. Now, with both the essays, one talking about the book view and field view and talking about Professor Jodhka's intervention, and again talking about the agrarian changes in the neoliberal times, I again want to bring in another article which talks about the elephant in the room, the concept called caste. Drawing from his 2022 paper, which was titled Agrarian Studies and the Caste Conundrum, Professor Jodhka invites us to look beyond the caste, not just as a religious phenomena, but also looking at the aspects of it being into the land relations and the realities of economic processes. We are all familiar with the concept of caste, and there is a very popular notion of how caste has come into being and the debates surrounding it, that we center it around that it is based on Varna hierarchy. It works on the dynamics of purity and pollution. Also, that it has its origin and ideological underpinning in the Hindu scripture. And this view became so dominant that even the modernization, the developmental theories that were developing, they thought that with the coming of development the menace of caste will wither away. And there was no need of any political intervention or as Sir uses the phrase, political onslaught to be made in that sense. But it didn't happen. it leaves us with a question, then how do we make sense of persistent caste today? For that, sir equips us with another way of looking at caste, which is called alternative view of the caste. He argues and he demonstrates through his, as he demonstrates in this paper, that there exist different dynamics and a diverse nature of caste-agriculture relationship. Even the idea of India's cultural past seems to be a perfectly moderated and made-up myth. There never existed at any point in time a singular way of looking at caste, never a singular form of caste. And the homogenized nature of caste that we see today largely began in the time of 1871 or say 1881, when Pan-India census started taking place. The larger question again then comes that if caste, the ecosystem that enabled caste has either weakened or it has altered, then how is caste persisting? Well, for that, Professor Jodhka again equips us with another concept, which is materiality of caste. The obvious question is, what does the phrase materiality of caste mean? It means that caste is not just a religious hierarchy of purity and pollution, rather it is an economic architecture. It is a mechanism which determines who owns the land, who is forced into unfree labor, and who controls the new capital market, and various other questions that we can probe. Attached to this question is also the question of dominant caste. I mean, how does a caste become a dominant caste? Is there some religious ordinance, religious decree? Answer is no. The answer can again be seen through this paper, as Professor Jodhka writes, that it is command over land and the caste system that enables their domination and unquestioned subjugation of landless and the untouchable caste. So eventually, at the heart of the paper lies that if ecosystems are surviving the caste has withered away, or it is altering, it is changing, how do we locate, how do we make sense of the persistence of caste? There are two interventions that we need to make in our understanding of caste. First is that we have to recognize the materiality of caste, and second, we have to adopt to a non-deterministic approach to the class. So with these three help of these three with these three essays, I think we get a sense of what Professor Jodhka's interventions in these domains looks like, and how it has moved forward the debate and understanding around the agrarian culture, rural transformation, and obviously with the knowledge of village. Now, while going through the essays, obviously there were certain questions, but even when I read all these three essays all together, some more questions and some more nuanced questions came into being. Maybe it may be nuanced for me, not for sir, but I'll again attempt asking those questions. That since you highlighted that the village was historically constructed in the sense, first by colonial administrator through book view, and then by anthropologists through field view to serve the ideological needs of the nation state, nation building, with the capital penetrating deeply into the village and rural-urban boundaries getting blurred, can we still treat village as a theoretical valid unit of sociological analysis? If yes, then are we ready to move past village as category to actually understand modern agrarian changes? Another question pertains to this, the later two essays that I discussed, that in 2022 paper, you note that the green revolution technology actually strengthened regionally dominant caste. Similarly, in 2012 paper, you observed that despite the second phase of mechanization drastically reducing the need of the human labor, the coercion of labor mortgage persisted among big farmers. My question is, if technological advancement does not inherently dissolve unfreedom, does the materiality of caste possess the unique capacity to subjugate modern technology itself? If it is so, and is it also the case that the modern agriculture technology has become a new instrument to enforce the caste-based subjugation? Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. That's it.